This is my final product for the Diffie-MOOC, multiplying to the hundredths place. My goal was to differentiate for different learners. The roadblocks were artistic ability, handwriting, phobias of public speaking and failure, and a feeling of boredom with the regular classroom workbook and projects, and then memorizing the algorithm for how to multiply multiple digits as well as incorporating the decimals in there was very difficult for a lot of students since I have a below grade level class. My lesson plan, the objective was to have students multiply decimals to the hundredths, and you can see the standards there that I incorporated. Some of them were academic, some of them were technology, and some of them were public speaking. Necessary items for this project were resources that I had gained from a website, an article that I found called Differentiate Teaching and Learning with Web 2.0 Tools. There were a number of resources there, and I incorporated some of them into my project, and then I found other ones as well that I had already been using. Graphic organizers were blank templates for comic strips, and the students used some of those. Probably about half the class opted to use some method of planning before they jumped on the computer. Paper and art supplies for students choosing to use paper and pencil projects. I only had one student do that, and it was because he did not have uh, permission on the network to get online, and that is something that comes from home. So he was disappointed, but he did do a good project. Unfortunately, I did not have the ability to scan it in. Computer lab was necessary. It was very difficult to get that because of all the testing and record keeping that we do for students. We have students that use the computer lab daily and weekly for different reasons, including Ames Web and fluency testing and read naturally in the afternoons, which is when we have math. So the lab was very, very difficult to get a hold of, but I did manage to get it for 4 days. And since it was before map testing, that was even more difficult. The Xerox machine was needed because we use our Xerox machine to scan to the network. So I scanned everything that you're going to see that is a visual aid in this project was scanned and emailed, and then also used as a method for student presentation in the classroom. The following video is a video that students use to help them review the process of multiplying with decimals. Many students opted to use this during their project. As you can see, the video is that math is fun, and it shows students step by step how to multiply. And even though it goes quickly, students paused and rewound the video, and then it has a very cool little extra method here on the side where it counts the decimals per row so that the students know how far over to move their decimal. And there were 3 or 4 different videos, each with different numbers of decimals and digits in the different rows. So students could see a number of variables to help them decide what kind of a math problem they wanted to use. Make-believe comics was the most popular method of presenting their ability to multiply decimals. And as you can see, there's the dashboard here on the left for make-believe comics, and they could make 2, 3, or 4 square comic strips. The larger one there on the bottom right is my example. I just showed the students how to create the comic and how to use the different tools very briefly in the classroom before we went down to the lab. And students needed confidence in their ability to do math and create a product. They needed to feel successful. They needed options. They needed a little bit of freedom, something that they haven't had for the most part with our program. And they needed to show that they had the ability to complete a project, which is very difficult in the short period of time that we have for math every day. Students that did not try or put forth a lot of effort during the year put a lot of effort into this project. I had a lot of students that completed projects that had not completed projects in the past. And we'll watch a video on one of those students in a little while. Even though the math isn't all correct, they all finished their projects. So it was kind of nice, and it made the kids feel good, especially the week before map testing, which is always really stressful for the kids. Screencast-O-Matic was another tool that I used, and the only two students that used Screencast-O-Matic also used either another tool on the computer or they used the comic strip creator. I have one student narrated product, and I have another student who recorded the product with no narration, um, but used an optional medium to display the way they did their math. And it wasn't something they talked to me about. I just kind of turned around and saw that she was doing it, and I was pretty impressed with the fact that she had thought that up to go and grab that tool. Um, Here are a few samples. The one on the top right is a comic strip, and they're both combinations. Paper and pencil was done. That student will be receiving a 3. And this one on the bottom left is the other method of displaying their ability. And both of these are a 2 just because the math was not correct, but you can see that they were starting to get the idea. And as you can see, this student used paint to write their problem and then used the drawing tool to display their solutions. Now she did not do the math completely correct, but you could tell she was on the right track. And this student I've had in the past has always had a difficult time completing projects, staying on task, um, or even participating. And she had the motivation to do this work on her own. And then she got up and started showing a few other students how to do this as well. So I'm going to speed things up here a little bit because it is 3.5 minutes long. You can see that she did the math. She did some of the math correctly, did not line things up correctly, and but the effort was there. You could tell that she was starting to get the hang of it with a few minor tweaks and some side lessons. She would be on track with this and on grade level. She has her dollar signs. She has evidence of decimals, but not quite all the points that she needs. This student never completes anything, often sits in the background, or causes distractions. He really enjoyed this, and he narrated it. I don't know if the sound will show up, but he did a very good job of narrating, and he was the first one in the class done. So I was very happy that he did this. This student got a 3. The student completed all of the artistic part of the project using the comic strip creator, had a little story, did the math correctly. It was difficult to draw lines, so I worked with the student to just even get these dotted lines over here on the right. The answer is correct. The student got a 3. This student on the bottom here got a 1. They didn't incorporate any math into their project. They spent a great deal of time creating, deleting, creating, deleting. They were more interested in the artistic part of the project. So this student got a 1, since there is no evidence of improvement or moving along in their progress. This is my rubric. For the purposes of this project, of this presentation, I only worried about their ability to multiply. I didn't worry about the other categories of my rubric, but for class we did. Uh, Results. I was actually really impressed with the results of this activity, even after only 3 full days of project and another half day. And so it was a total of less than 3 hours probably of students actually working. So over 4 days. The pre-activity assessment I took, 21 students were tested, 43% of them passed. Post-activity, 20 students were tested and 65% of them passed. I was really pleased with these results. Some of the challenges of this project were access to the computer lab. Printer access was a surprise because I was not told this year that when students log onto the computers every day that the printers disappear. So every time a student had to print a product so that I could make a record of it, we had to add the printer to every single computer. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. Headphone access was difficult, and I think this is one of the reasons why students decided not to use Screencast-O-Matic, because they didn't want to share headphones. Most of the headphones in our school of 400 plus students are destroyed. So students had to share, and I think that was not something that they wanted to do. They had the option of bringing their own with a mic, but they decided that they didn't want to risk them getting destroyed or lost at school. A quiet workspace for recording was also difficult because every time somebody wanted to use Screencast-O-Matic, the students around them had to quiet down. So some students were either embarrassed that the class would hear them or didn't want to ask people to quiet down. Time for slow learners was difficult because with the comic strip creator, every time you have to shut down your computer, you have to start over again the next time. You can't save it. Fast finishers, I had to find some work for them to do, so they used some math websites that we had established beforehand. Network reliability was also difficult because our network goes up and down a lot. We share a server with another school, and it's not the best setup in the world. The curriculum schedule was also difficult because map testing was coming up the following week after we did this project, and usually we use that time for review or to just plug some holes that we had not got to fill during the year. The overall experience was positive, even though it was very stressful and down to the wire. I gained a lot of insight into some of my students' ability and some of their other talents. I got to practice a few tools that I had not got to use for a while, and I got to learn a few new tools. Students got trained, and this is what I was happy about. I have a handful of students now who know how to add printers to the network. I had to show them how to do it, and they remembered, and they were running around the lab when they were done with their project installing printers for students who wanted to print. And then when we went to other computer labs or other classrooms, they learned how to find the best printer for that classroom and add those to the computer. So they can do that every time somebody needs to print now. The copy machine, I have few students who know how to use that now. And so that makes my life easier, and I don't have to get up and make copies every time I have to. And I have student leaders now that I didn't have before, students that were very shy or bashful that are now feeling very um, enabled in math class. And that is my project. I hope that you enjoyed it.